My name is Dan Beauregard. I'm a cloud and DevOps evangelist at XebiaLabs. I'm going to open up this session here, and then I'm going to hand it off to our featured speaker, who is Kishore. Why am I forgetting? Yeah. So Kishore Jonalagada, right? There you go. Very, very good. So Kishore is a application architect for emerging technologies at Toyota Motors North America. He is going to lead you through Toyota's journey for transforming their large, multi-dimensional development ecosystem into a standard enterprise platform, but doing so all the while by maintaining and conforming to Toyota's strict policies of development, maintaining and improving processes, which they have proven through the years that really generates optimal results. So before I hand it off to Kishore, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about XebiaLabs, my company. So we've been part of the DevOps process since the very, very early days. We've been solely focused on DevOps and continuous delivery, and we've had the privilege to work with some of the best known and best run organizations out there, like Toyota. Every company is really, we're finding out, is really a software company nowadays. And as such, you will find our great customers across every single industry: financial services, retail, manufacturing, healthcare, all the way to both the public and government sectors. So how do we help organizations? So first off, how many folks here are familiar with the XebiaLabs periodic table of DevOps tools? All right, so these are available at booth 503, so definitely feel free to stop by and get your own. Later this year, we're going to actually start coming up with revision 4 of the periodic table. So that's going to be pretty exciting. Okay, so why did I mention that? Well, the first thing we do at XebiaLabs is we help organizations connect all of the different tools that you have utilized in your DevOps tool chain. We do that through deep integration with the tools that we developed through the many years working in the DevOps space. And we also have a very flexible platform that can easily adapt to homegrown tools that you might have. This replaces the ad hoc scripting that so many organizations still utilize today, and it's proven that it just does not scale. Secondly, we have a very powerful deployment automation engine that can seamlessly deploy your applications to any environment: legacy to cloud, containers to serverless. But what we do throughout both the orchestration and the deployment automation is we collect the data from all of your different tool sets, and we unify it in what we call our DevOps Data Hub. And then we can make that data available to all of your stakeholders across your organization: your developers, your release managers, your directors, and your business leaders. And that is what gives you that ability for continuous learning, which is what DevOps is all about. All right, so last, before I hand off to Kishore, is we do have our booth 503 in the exhibit hall. If you're interested in learning more about any of these technologies, please stop by. We'd be happy to discuss further with you. But now, I would like to have Kishore come to the stage and talk about his and Toyota's journey. All right.
Hey, everybody. All right, before I begin, how many of you drive a Toyota or a Lexus? Look at that, awesome. Isn't it, it's needless to say, there are hundreds and hundreds of applications that go behind the scenes to make that thing awesome. Pre-sales, post-sales, your service time, every one of those. Now, this is their journey onto that DevOps platform. Let's see. So, did you all know that Toyota is more than just a car company? I mean, yes, we make a lot of money with cars, but we're also in 2017, 2018, we kind of declared that we were a mobility company. So, we'll be including mobility as a service, autonomous, you name it, point A to point B. Now, way back when, if you're into manufacturing or whatnot, high quality, low cost, and shortest lead time. The three fundamental principles of DevOps. This was pioneered in 1950 by Toyota into the Toyota production system. And it's amazing that it is still one of the core operating principles in Toyota plants. It's just amazing. Anything that you read out there, it's really true. It's just super to see how that works. Now, when it comes to IT, the systems that were built for those plants and eventually the sales and operations, they were built organically. So, it's a discrete and diverse stack. So we have Java, .NET, that's just to name a few, and then I can go on the list. And as they were built, they adopted the best practices at that time. So the teams that were building them, knew they had to build some quality and then build pipelines. So, there were n number of, their own build pipelines. I wouldn't even call it a pipeline. It's a Jenkins server and whatnot that used to have back in the day Hudson, if people remember that. And then of course the wall philosophy. Right? There were developers, there were QA guys, and then the operators. So everybody had their own way of verifying. Quality was always there. It is just measured in a unique way per that team. So very, very standard, challenging aspect, first step for an IT organization. And then, of course, that resulted in a lot of muda, a lot of waste. So we thought, it's time to think about this and rethink our strategy here. And we were thinking of CAM. And by that, I don't mean the camshaft there. We got a lot of those. I'm talking about the culture automation and measurement that's out there. So we had to take what is there, a fatter ITIL, make it kind of lean, and then we had to build some DevOps practices incrementally on top of that before we got to the full DevOps stacks. Now, that's a pretty daunting task. Already, like I said, there are hundreds and hundreds of people, different culture, different diverse apps. Some apps are, are they even designed for this sort of a thing? That was a vast landscape, unexplored at that time. So we had to take this opportunity. So for us, we said, let's try it out. Let's put this on the landscape, see how we go forward. To tackle a problem that magnitude, what we did was nemawashi these ideas. Nemawashi is kind of meeting individual interested parties, and when I say teams, and figuring out what is their landscape going to look like. And so if I said we're going to introduce DevOps, the first thing people would obviously do is read up on DevOps and say, oh, are we getting this entire thing? Like, well, no. In reality, not at the first go. I wish. But you have to put it a realistic landscape. For example, these green things are what we said you're going to get. You're going to get authentication authorization, part of it, code analysis, then maybe a part of the value stream. You're not going to get feature flags yet. So things that are important. And what we did was we went around talking to a bunch of teams, and then figured out which teams are really interested in actually playing this game with us. So, and then Kaizen, you talk to the teams and you improve your idea on how you want to introduce this. Kaizen is continuous improvement. So then you have a journey that you can begin. But how do you document this process? Here at Toyota, we use Ji Kotei Kanketsu, or JKK for short. And of course, Toyota business process to build on it. So Ji Kotei Kanketsu, the template on the side is an example of one of our DevOps, JKK. What it is it's documenting the bigger challenge. Those big stars in the orange or that you see are the challenge areas where we need to improve. And then you socialize this idea. You then improve on it. But now there is a documented process that you can present up the chain, so folks know how that is going to work. And then at the bottom half of this thing is how would you improve it? Like n minus so many days to by the time you get here to the day on which you release, what's going to change, how the process is going to improve. And then you take small portions of it and you apply the Toyota business process under. This is a more granular aspect of how you're improving that step in the process. Now let's see how we did it. So well, we chose automation, which is the first and relatively easier ones to solve. At least we knew what the tools are, we knew what the landscape was. Now all we had to do is isolate which tools we need. So our landscape currently looks like this. I mean, this is a bit of iterative process where you have to find that whether all the tools meet your needs. But we got Jenkins, we got of course there's a diverse platform like .NET, Python, Java, Angular, whatnot. I mean, this is just a small list, but you got a whole bunch of things. And then the tool that you pick has to work across the board. I mean, you can't have the teams pivot overnight. So then you got Jenkins and then SonarQube for our SAST. You got a repository for Artifactory, so whatnot. Pretty much how you would pick your tool set. And then we needed to build these, and we realized we were building an enterprise scale thing. So we knew we had to build it so it has to scale. And it's probably going to scale pretty significantly because people, when you bring in these external or people who have been writing code in a way that they thought was best, when it comes on board, you'll realize that suddenly your Jenkins slaves or all the resources are eating up or whatnot. So there will be some surprises that you'll have to accommodate to without bringing the rest of the world down. So scalability was part of that. So we used ECS and all that on AWS for our own slaves. So we built our own auto-scaling infrastructure behind the scenes. Same thing with CD now. Now once we have the binary version and all tagged in Artifactory, it's for us to push it out and see what happens. So again, we got Jenkins as one of our executors. We have Jira. Jira is one of our backlog. ServiceNow, our ITIL process. Then we got Docker images, and you name it. But we needed something to stitch them all together. So we use XL Release to kind of stitch everything, all of these together, and orchestrate across the environments. So this is where XL Release from XebiaLabs came in handy. So and then we are a multi-cloud service. So AWS, Azure are one of them. So, but we need to make sure that the solution worked across the board. So of course we picked Terraform as one of our packaging tools, so we can infra as code. Well, we gave the power to the developers with all of this, and they were super happy. In fact, in a recent survey, I got a whole bunch of XOs, and I love it. I mean, I'm married and all, but I'll take that. So this is great. They went on chugging. Workflows were being built. Well, let's see how that worked. That's how it looked. First cut was, okay, yes, everybody wants to do everything and in their own way, and they all thought they were doing it right. So that was way too many parts for pipelines. So that was our first revelation on, okay, there is something that we need to rethink about this thing. So and then on top of that, if you ever been in the ITIL process and the change management process, every step of the way, the CAB meetings, the coordination with change managers, change owners, it's all manual. Somebody has to be there, somebody has to ask questions and click OK. Now, we gave them the cool tools like XL Release and all of that to do this, but the problem is they didn't know how to integrate or automate these things. So there's a bunch of manual workflows in XL Release, just translated from ServiceNow. So we said, okay, that's not going to work because we want to get to full step, stack DevOps at some point. So we had to step back and we had to take care of a few things to make what you saw in the previous slide to something like this. So managing extended pipelines. So the pipelines that were given, instead of giving a pure greenfield pipeline, you have to spend the effort of building a pipeline that caters to specific use cases. And that was where my team's investment went into. And you do have to give the flexibility for the teams to turn certain knobs, not all of them. So for example, Jenkins, you don't want to give them the ability to just write a plain vanilla Jenkins file. Then you get all kinds of the first side. You kind of have to write it such that it's you have parameters that you can provide and get the ball rolling on it. But they have to be strict, but also have to be flexible to accommodate certain degrees of things. Same thing with workflows. The XebiaLabs workflows that you've seen, they need to templatize things. There are certain guardrails we absolutely have to have, like the SOX compliance rules. We cannot bypass it. There are certain templatized workflows they have to have. So those are where stuff that we put in. And on top of that, we built in workflows where you can actually integrate into, the integration to ServiceNow is not as straightforward. So we had to make sure that we integrate properly. And this is where, again, we used XL Release to kind of integrate into ServiceNow and into those APIs to make sure that the change release process is kind of taken care of. Now, there is one step here that we intentionally left manual as an approval because that is one of our audit process, or that's the compliance process that we're following. That, along with all the tools and necessary measurement utilities in there, now address the first automation part, and then the ability to measure part. Now comes the biggest thing in the CAM, the culture. Now, we were hoping we've given all the things to adopt shift left. All it takes is teams to start moving left. But the dashboards were not so colorful at all. So, in fact, some of them were just plain white. And if you go into Sonar Cube, I'm like, oh, okay, nothing's happening here. So that's when we realized the investments that are needed to go into making those things, like you need to write enough unit tests. You need to make those things churn the numbers and make it rich. So how do you do that? And that is where the cultural challenge came in for us. So the way we approach this is we kind of gamified this a little. So threw in leaderboards and dashboards that people could show it. And we have a good thing at Toyota's campus is we have these TVs in the specific development areas. So people could just throw in the dashboard on the TV just to show the color and the richness in there, the time, how good their code quality is and where they are on the leaderboard and all of that. So that triggered some change. We slowly saw those dashboards becoming more and more green, and that's where you want them to be. And then this notion of, hey, I wrote the code. Can you write the test in the sprint? We had to change that. So we brought in this extra responsibility of reduce the percentage of QA necessarily, especially doing manual QA, and then turn it into automation. The developers can write, if they're writing Java and they want to write some Selenium code, it's all in Java. Have a platform established, right? Get into the habit of writing code or writing tests as part of your development process. So kind of take over the dev plus QA role. And then notice that I'm saying QE is pending. So the way we look at automation as opposed to just quality assurance as manual checking is more engineering approach to it. So the quality engineering is working on scripts and trying to run it on multi-platforms, scale it in SOS labs or something like that, and kind of make this run so the 80% first part that the developers gave, they enrich that and make it scalable for an enterprise. And that's what they're focusing on. So they're not necessarily writing the functional tests only. They're kind of adding more value to it. And then if you look at DevOps, the true picture of DevOps, right? I mean, on the right side, you see the business strategy, the business themes, and their KPIs that go in there. Then there are engineering metrics. So in true, the spirit of DevOps, everything is measuring up to meet the business. And that's the whole story you hear anywhere in DevOps. So, but for us, we use our Hoshin Kanri documents. So they actually capture the KPIs that we have. So now, as we are bringing in more and more power to the engineering team and the iterative speed, we needed to make sure that more and more KPIs went into the business documents also, so we can map them up. And of course, we do publish our KPIs. Every team, including the engineering team supporting the business teams, publish the KPIs. So we kind of tie these things together. And that's how now the KPIs were more visible on how they're mapping up the chain. And we challenge the business to add more KPI. I mean, though, back in the day, if you've ever been in a KPI battle, how you swap KPIs, and the business ends up dropping a whole bunch of KPI. They usually bring like a whole bag full, and you pick like 2 from there. If you're planning for a whole 6 months. But if you're going at the velocity we are, you can pick a whole bag full and put it out there as an extendable KPIs, and then people were able to meet that. So then, of course, it doesn't stop. The refactoring is an ongoing journey all the time. So, but we had to account for some time catered. So after some, harsh negotiations, it's like we're right now at 10% of engineering time. We ideally want it to be higher, about 20, but that's something that we'll be pushing up. So as we improve our stacks. So even with the greenfield apps, you can see that 10% is paying off with the way things are iterating. Again, technology is new. There are a lot of churn and a lot of things happening as far as the teams are concerned. So as soon as a new person comes in, new code, learning process, you need that 10% tech debt to kind of take care of that. And to add it all, we reduced what used to be a 3-week sprint cycle, staggered, and the release was like, a quarter long. We kind of cut down the sprints to a 2-week thing. And then we encourage these teams to kind of go faster. In fact, the DevOps platform team, my own team, delivers about 6 to 7 times a week, which is on an average, at 1 time a day. And without causing the hundreds of builds that are going on, any disruption. So we kind of adopted that Scrum model. So there are teams on the extreme end of that, like my team, and a whole bunch of new teams. And then there are teams that are still on the 2-week sprint cycle. But that is where we want to get them, is to show that you can release on a much more frequency. So with that, we were able to achieve a good chunk of velocity and help the teams move faster, meet the KPIs. So what worked best for us? For us, the first leg of starting off this big journey on a huge terrain, Nemo washing and Kaizening, those ideas. The map that I showed you, it took a while before we could come up with that layout. But we had to go through iterative process, figure out how we do this. Then we have to figure out the right tools that would fit the category, because there'll be people who would tell you technologies that don't necessarily fit in there. What we learned is we don't necessarily have to solve every single problem. As long as we're able to get to the right set, the tools matter. And of course, somehow budget matters too. So you got to make sure that everything fits into that budget with the right tools. And then start small. I wouldn't go and boil the ocean and say, everybody, hey, today is Enterprise Platform Day. We went to start small, and we then eventually started growing. Now we have about 200 plus teams on our platform, and a build happening every 3 minutes. But those were the top 3 things that kind of worked for us. And of course, things we would do differently, I wouldn't give the keys to the kingdom on day one. So rules for pipelines, make sure you have these guardrails. Don't start off with pipelines that are like open and wide. Make sure you have the right rigid pipelines. Templates for workflows for the CD. You absolutely have to have these things. It's difficult to teach later on. You have to set these guardrails so people get it the first time. And last but not least is documentation and training. What is unbelievable is, as we were doing this, we were looking at these tools, we were getting the expertise, and we were comfortable, okay, yeah, this solves problem A, problem B, and C. But it also means that there are lots of tools out there. And although we figured out the challenging integration aspects of it, it still meant that the development teams needed to learn how these tools work and how they worked in our environment. So there's lots of emphasis that we needed to do on documenting and training, and put the right set of training. I'm not talking about elaborate, day-long sessions. It's simple 1-minute videos on how these things work actually help for us. So I was surprised that when we did the first 5 videos on, hey, this is how your Jenkins, these are the things you got to do in Jenkins, these are the things you got to do in your XebiaLabs, just like literally 1 minute, nothing more, 5 of those, and we got a huge thumbs up from our customers. So that is one thing we would do from the get-go. So that's all I had for you today. Thank you. Do you want to join the questions?
Questions from the crowd?
Oh.
Go ahead.
I heard one of the statements you made is about transforming or putting in your ad hoc programs or ad hoc scripts. How do you define an ad hoc script? Whatever you create perhaps starts this journey as an ad hoc.
So you're talking about how do we find out how do we not stop people from putting ad hoc scripts in the pipeline?
I want you to define what ad hoc script is.
What is an ad hoc script? Great question. So here's a more concrete example. How do you build a Spring Boot Java app, and deploy it? I mean, people could come up with Maven. People would come with a different version of Maven. They could put Docker in there. I mean, all these they're all valid. It is just that they're not the same. So, and then some people could put check styles in there. I mean, I have SonarQube and other things. You could put check style in there. So when you leave that open, the command becomes challenging. So what we said was, no, here's a pipeline that's going to build you a Maven app for the API use case, or here's a pipeline for you to build a specific, Angular for this particular thing. So be more precise in what you're doing, and you have to give the bells and whistles of, well, I want this much memory, or I want to run n number of use cases. You can't time out on my slaves and things like that. So that's the thing. Are we sharing the slide decks?
We'll have to look into that.
Okay.
I'm not sure. My guess is yes.
Yes, sir.
How many rigid pipelines you have to create in order to satisfy your conditions?
Sorry, I can.
So how many of these
pipe-
pipelines you had to really create to satisfy?
Great question. How many pipelines did we have to create to satisfy this? That's a great question. So right now, we have 28 pipelines. So just 28. So, all the variations and with multi-cloud and all of that. So what's funny is, it turns out when people, when they come to you, they're thinking of a certain solution. And when you say, no, we have this instead, would you like it? They're like, okay, we'll take it. So they're okay with that, a good portion of it. Then there are those who really want to stick to it, and then you can, we iterate very fast. Like I said, ours, we're releasing daily as we build our pipelines. So we build, our backlog is visible for the entire universe of Toyota. So people can just go in there and say, we want this. If you have enough people, here's a pipeline for you.
Then a follow-up question on you deliver or you release every day. Does that mean your Jenkins instances are what reboot agnostic or resilient?
Yes, it has to be. So like I said, they had to be scalable and resilient. So the work, the way we release is kind of what do you call it? I wouldn't call it red black, but basically we bring in the instance that is required, the master instance, and then once we do our testing, we just cut over. So it's like a DNS cutover. It's a simple, straightforward. The workers themselves are completely ephemeral. So we tell the people that, hey, look, don't expect any state on the workers. Yes?
You spoke about using metrics and analytics as a means of mindset shift, which was very interesting for me. Can you talk a little bit more about what sort of metrics you used and what was your team's acceptance of it? Did it help you move any needle?
Yeah, so the question was usage of metrics and how did we influence the teams, right? So the thing about this is we were using SonarQube as one of the tools. So and then XebiaLabs for the CD. So XebiaLabs also provides a whole bunch of dashboards. So does SonarQube. So we said, hey, here's a bunch of available dashboards. Here's what it would look like. And remember, I said start off small and then go big. So we picked two teams and that were small enough to do the right thing. So you kind of have to put that investment in so you have something to show. And this is what the green thing comes in. This is what Security First will give you so that people know that, oh, okay, there are vulnerabilities. And then we showed the other teams, well, you're missing all of this. So you got to put something. As soon as they put in something, they're, and you start kind of gamifying this, two or three teams put this in there at the bottom. So questions will be raised as, hey, why are you at the bottom? Especially when you're flashing this on your TVs. So you kind of socialize those dashboards in a way. And that kind of, there's this inherent, just like my Fitbit or anything like that, I just want to be bubbling up. So just play on that psychology.